Imagine this: you're 7 years old, and the very people who are supposed to love you, protect you, are the ones who hurt you. You learn to smile while you're breaking inside. You learn to stay quiet because telling the truth only makes it worse. I'm Gemie. I'm 38 now, and for decades I carried scars nobody could see. From the outside, we look like a normal middle-class family, but behind closed doors it was hell. Abuse, manipulation, secrets. Survival became my only way of life. I'm not telling this story to shock you or to get pity. I'm telling it because for years I thought I was broken beyond repair. But the truth is, I wasn't broken. I was adapting. My mind and body were doing whatever it took to keep me alive. So if you've ever felt like something's wrong with you, if you've ever wondered why love feels unsafe, why trust feels impossible, or why you shut down just to make it through the day, stay with me, because this isn't just a story about trauma. It's about survival, healing, and breaking a cycle that's been passed down for generations. On the surface, we look like the picture of a happy suburban family. A 4-bedroom house in a quiet neighborhood. My parents had steady jobs, my sibling and I went to school, played sports, did after-school activities. To the outside world, we were completely normal. No one would have guessed that behind that front door. Life felt like a war zone. By the time I was 7, I already knew home wasn't safe. The people who were supposed to protect me were the ones I was most afraid of. And it didn't stop with them. I was handed off sometimes to family friends, sometimes to groups of strangers. Some wore uniforms. Some were well respected. I became a secret no one wanted to see, a bargaining chip traded in silence. I tried to tell people. I thought if I told a teacher, a neighbor, anyone, they'd rescue me. But every time I opened my mouth, all I got was doubt, pity, or nothing at all. Social workers came by a few times. They looked around, smiled politely, and left. And I stayed, trapped, invisible. And I paid for every word I spoke. That's when the punishment started, hands gripping my neck nights, without food, blows to the head that made everything spin. I was terrified to sleep because waking up might mean more pain. My dad's rage was like a storm that could hit without warning. One wrong look, one wrong word, and the house would explode. My mom, she didn't need fists. She had words sharper than any blade. She could twist reality until I doubted my own memories. She'd smile sweetly for guests, then whisper in my ear that I was worthless, that no one would ever believe me. And she was right, nobody did. So I learned to survive. I stopped talking. I shrank myself, made myself invisible. I taught myself to freeze, to leave my body when it got too scary, too painful. Because speaking up didn't save me. It only made the punishment worse. I became a ghost in my own home, a child too afraid to cry, too afraid to even feel. By the time I was 12, something inside me just shut down. I stopped hoping anyone would save me. I stopped even hoping to escape. My brain decided the only way to survive was to forget. I taught myself how to disappear, not physically, but mentally. I'd float up and watch from the ceiling while it was happening, like it was happening to someone else. I got so good at leaving my body that entire days blurred together. I couldn't tell you what I ate, what I wore, or what I did at school. And honestly, that was the point. Forgetting felt safer than remembering. But checking out didn't stop the abuse. My mom still treated me like I was nothing more than currency. My stepdad used money to control me, threatening to throw us out on the street if I didn't do what he wanted. At school, I was an easy target. Kids could smell the fear on me. But at home, I'd had enough. I started lashing out, trying to fight back. All it did was earn me worse punishments. I lived in a constant state of war, bullied at school, brutalized at home, and completely invisible to the rest of the world. What I was doing has a name: dissociation. It's your brain's emergency exit. When a kid can't fight or run, the mind just leaves. That's why so many survivors say it felt like I was watching it happen to someone else. Dissociation lives on a spectrum, spacing out, losing chunks of time, even full-on memory loss. For me, it was blackouts. Hours, sometimes whole days gone. And it wasn't just in my head. My whole body carried it. Some days I felt like I had an alarm system wired straight into my chest. The tiniest sound, a shadow, even a glance, would send my heart racing. My hands ice cold, my body locked up like I was under attack. Then, just as suddenly, it would all shut off. I'd go completely numb. No feelings, no sensations, just frozen. I'd sit there staring at the chaos around me like I was watching a movie. Sometimes I'd stand in the middle of a screaming match and hear nothing but a dull roar in my ears like I was underwater. My body learned to survive by swinging like a pendulum, hyper alert. One moment completely shut down the next. That was my normal for years. By the time I was an adult, I was walking around in a body that felt like it was at war with itself. Panic attacks would slam into me out of nowhere. My heart would race, my chest would tighten, and I'd swear I was about to die, even if I was just standing in line at the grocery store. Anxiety wasn't a passing mood for me. It was my baseline. It was the air I breathed. And then there was the pain. Constant, relentless pain. My joints ached. My body felt inflamed, no matter how much I rested or what I tried. It was like I was living inside a body that didn't even feel like mine anymore. Doctors couldn't explain why my reproductive system was so damaged, why I had scars they couldn't account for. They'd look at my charts, shake their heads, and I'd just sit there smiling politely, pretending I was okay. But inside I felt shattered, ashamed. Like there was something fundamentally wrong with me, something broken at my core. That shame became a compass, leading me straight into relationships I thought I deserved. Partners who were controlling, cruel, and sometimes violent. I married twice, and both marriages fell apart quickly, each one leaving me with deeper wounds than before. I tried medication. I tried everything the doctors handed me: anti-anxiety meds, antidepressants, all of it. Some dulled the edge a little, but most of them left me feeling like a ghost, or came with side effects so awful that I decided I'd rather just live with the anxiety. So I did. I just endured it. Here's the truth about trauma. It doesn't just disappear because you refuse to look at it. Your body keeps score. If you don't face the memories, they don't fade away. They stay alive in your nervous system, in your muscles, in every breath you take. And one day, if you keep ignoring them, your body will hand you the bill. I was paying that bill every single day of my life. By the time I reached adulthood, I was already walking around in a body that felt like it was at war with itself. Panic attacks in the grocery store line. Pain that no doctor could explain, shame that seeped into every relationship. I had built a life on survival mode, and I thought that was just how I'd always be. And then somehow, against all odds, I got pregnant. After years of fertility treatments and heartbreak, I was holding not one but two tiny miracles in my arms. For a moment, I thought love had healed me. I thought maybe, just maybe, these babies could erase decades of pain. But their cries, those cries cracked me open. They weren't just babies crying, they were alarms, sirens, echoes of the screams I'd buried so deep I didn't even know they were mine. Every time I held them, I felt this overwhelming mix of love so fierce it hurt, and fear so deep it hollowed me out. Nights blurred together. I'd rock them in the dark, tears streaming down my face, whispering, "You're safe. Mommy's here." But deep down, I didn't feel safe at all. I was split in two, the terrified little girl who never got rescued, and the mother who desperately wanted to protect her children. By the time they were 3 months old, I couldn't hide it anymore. I was drowning in exhaustion and panic in memories I couldn't name. That's when I asked for help. Real help. I went all in one-on-one therapy group work, somatic healing breath work that shook my body like a storm. I wrote for hours, hundreds of pages pouring out everything I couldn't say out loud. At first, all I knew was something inside me was deeply, deeply wrong. I didn't have the full picture yet, but my body did. Slowly, painfully, the memories started to surface, not as stories at first, but as flashes, whispers, sensations that made me flinch. And with every piece that surfaced, the shame I'd carried my whole life began to make sense. When the memories started to surface, it felt like my entire world cracked wide open. For years, I had been walking around in pieces, functioning on the outside, while my body carried secrets my mind refused to remember. Healing wasn't about fixing myself. It was about slowly, painfully learning how to stitch those pieces back together. The first step was saying it out loud, naming not only what did happen, but what never happened, the hugs. I never got the words, "I'm proud of you." I never heard the safety I never felt. That kind of love and affirmation was stolen from me. So I learned how to reparent myself to show up for the little girl inside me who had only ever known fear. I started speaking to myself with the gentleness I should have had as a child. And that wasn't just self-love. Science shows self-compassion can calm your nervous system, activate the vagus nerve, and literally rewire your brain. Healing wasn't just emotional, it was physical. Trauma doesn't just live in your head, it lives in your muscles, your breath, your nervous system. Through somatic therapy, mindfulness breathwork, I learned how to bring my body out of survival mode and remind myself that I was safe now. I wrote hundreds of journal pages not just to vent, but because writing helps integrate memory. Studies show that naming emotions on paper calms the brain's alarm system, and for the first time, my body could relax. But the real turning point came when I found safe people. Sitting in group therapy and survivor circles felt terrifying at first. Yet slowly, being in a room with calm, caring people began to rewire me. My nervous system finally learned what safety felt like. This is neuroplasticity in action, the brain-changing rewiring healing. Not overnight, not all at once, but step by step with intention and repetition, I built a version of myself I had never known before. And part of that was understanding all the masks I had worn to survive. The caretaker, the peacemaker, the invisible one. Those roles kept me alive as a kid, but they also silenced me. I had to unlearn them one by one. I also had to face how trauma shaped my relationships. I'd swing between anxious and avoidant attachment, desperate for love, but terrified to be seen. Underneath it all was one toxic belief: I'm not lovable. I have to earn love. That wasn't truth. That was a survival story written by a scared child. Here's what I know now. Healing doesn't just bring you back to who you were, it transforms you. Psychologist Richard Tedeschi calls it post-traumatic growth, deeper appreciation for life, stronger connections, new opportunities, spiritual growth, and strength you never knew you had. I'll never go back to that girl who felt unsafe in her own skin. I've evolved, like a broken bone that heals stronger at the fracture I am strongest in the places I was once shattered. Even my ADHD-like chaos, the forgetfulness, the emotional storms, the constant overwhelm has quieted. Tools like CBT planners and medication help, but trauma work clears the noise. It drains years of tension from your nervous system, and suddenly you have space to breathe again. This is why I tell my story. Not for shock value, but for healing for me, for other survivors, and for every child who deserves to be believed. You know, if there's one thing I've learned through all of this, it's that no child should ever have to scream for help and be met with silence. Kids don't make things up like that. Their words, their tears, their feelings, they matter. I wish someone had told me that when I was little. I share my story not because it's easy, but because I don't want anyone else to feel as alone as I did. You don't have to be strong by yourself. There is nothing weak about reaching out, about telling your story, about saying, "I'm not okay." That's actually where healing begins. So if you're carrying something heavy, drop it here in the comments or share it somewhere safe. Someone will listen. And if this message spoke to you, I'd love for you to join me. Subscribe to The Truth MD and hit that bell so you won't miss what's next. Every week, I share science-backed tools, trauma and ADHD insights, body-mind practices, and small rituals that can help you stand a little taller and feel a little less alone. Together, we can build a community where survivors are believed, kids are heard, and healing is not just possible, it's inevitable.